So, if you can pay attention for a little while, this is not one of the short ones, but we have to cover a lot of ground to understand this. You know, we, the president just did a State of the Union address, and he made comments about this too. But everybody is. Why can't they just get along in the Middle East? Why do they have to have endless fighting? This Nobody ever would ask a question like that, would they? No, everybody asks. Why can't this ongoing cycle of violence end simply by dividing the land into two states? In other words, if we give Israel and we give the Palestinians, the people who call themselves Palestinians, if we give them their own state, why wouldn't the fighting stop? Well, as we speak, the White House and the United Nations are trying to force that kind of solution, a two-state solution on Israel and the Palestinians. They want to force it on them. In fact, Thursday evening, the night before last, in the State of the Union, President Biden called for it, along with a ceasefire. All right. I've already addressed why you just don't have a ceasefire. We've addressed that. And if you want to hear it, it's on YouTube. You can go listen. But I think I even talked about that last week. But I want to address the two-state solution today at this time. So the bottom line is there is little doubt in my mind, little doubt, in fact, there's no doubt that the idea of a two-state solution is nothing but a non-starter. It's a political solution to a problem that's not political. So look, I am sure that most people who think that a two-state solution would solve the problem, I'm sure there are, and they are idealistic, they're positive, they're rational, and most of them are really good people. I'm not upset with the people. It's the idea. I am even more certain that those same people think this way because they're not good listeners. That is why those who think a two-state solution would bring peace to the Jews and the Arabs should listen very carefully to what I'm about to say for the next few minutes. I am going to explain that since the Arabs and the Jews are anything but idealistic, a two-state solution ain't going to happen. It's a non-starter. So, a quick note before I start. I really hate what I'm saying about this. I hate it. I wish I could say that this was nothing more than a territorial dispute between the Jews and the Arabs who lived there. I wish I could say that. I wish I could say that the fighting is caused only by a few extremists on both sides. I wish I could say that, but it isn't true. I wish I could say that only a few activists are preventing this simple good idea of a two-state solution. I wish I could say that the Arab Muslim countries surrounding Israel are peaceful places and only the people calling themselves Palestinians have an issue with Israel. I wish I could say that. I wish I could say that once these Arabs who identify as Palestinians would have their own state, all the fighting would be resolved. Man, do I wish I could say that. I wish I could say that if there was an argument or a disagreement, the people in question would know that fighting is not the answer. Oh, gosh, do I wish I could say that. I wish I could say that there is a middle ground that could be reached. The only thing middle there is the Middle East. There's no middle ground. I can tell you that I have honestly wanted to believe these things for my entire life because I was born a year after Israel was formed. But none of those things can happen because there is no ideal world, especially there. Reality is what is happening in the region, not what we wish it could be. So sadly, we all know that the reality of the Middle East is that things work a lot differently than in the West. We know there is a problem. No one will argue with that at all. No one. The thing is, to solve a problem, we have to understand the problem. We also have to understand the morals and the values of the people involved. Two things. You have to understand what is the problem and what are the morals and values of the people. This is where those who think a two-state solution will solve the problem hit the wall. You see, there is no problem that the two-state solution is going to solve. So let's examine the situation, and I think it will become obvious as to why. All right, let me offer some proof points. We've we've covered some of these before, but we'll cover them again because no one should forget the actual truth. There have been many opportunities for the parties to come together to partition the land. This isn't the first conversation we're having today, obviously. Palestinians have had many opportunities to establish a state for themselves. Each time they refused because the only state they will accept would be one that eliminates the Jewish state off the map. The only one they'll accept. They won't accept two states. They want one state, theirs. That is all the Palestinians say they will accept. It has never been anything to do with settlements or occupation. Nothing to do with that. Their visceral hatred toward the Jew was there well before 1967 when Israel won Judea and Samaria and Gaza. In fact, it was already there before Israel was established in 1948. There is a fundamental difference between the morals and ethics of the Jewish Israeli society and the Palestinian Arab Muslim society. There's a huge difference in those morals and values. Israeli society is highly diverse. All Israeli society participates without fear of being persecuted. The men, the women, the blacks, the whites, LGBTQ, and Arabs who live there are all free to live their lives. They're all free to vote in the elections. They're all free to take part in government. Even there's a judge that is an Arab. An Israeli judge is an Arab. Everybody participates. The levels of political violence are even lower than it is here in the United States. It's even lower. Israel lives and acts as a democracy. Everybody is welcome. Everybody can participate. No, everybody can't win what they want to win. The majority rules. But everybody participates equally. For context, let us look at what is happening outside Israel in the Muslim countries in the region. There are rich countries, poor countries, Sunni countries, and Shia countries. There are those in Africa and those in Asia. So let me ask you a question. I would love to hear if any one of you can find one of those countries who would say they were democratic. The morals and the values are different. Can any one of you find even one of those countries that work hard to protect and support human rights? One. Their morals and values are different. Can any one of you find even one of those countries that have thriving minority populations living within? Can any one of you find even one of those countries that would stand up for freedom and peace? I would wait for an answer about, yeah, Shabbos will be over soon and daylight savings time will be set, so we're going to lose another hour. So I'm not going to do it because it isn't going to happen. You all know I'm right, but none of us should like this situation. None of us. Even so, please do not counter by saying it is not relevant to the topic like so many do. It is not only relevant, but it also makes the point. The way these Arab Muslim countries operate tells us something about the values and the morals of Muslim society. Over the years, these countries have chased out anyone who did not believe as they do. Jewish and Christian populations have plummeted in those countries. In one of the most Christian towns in the world, and you all know it's got to be Bethlehem, since that town wound up in Arab hands, its Christian population went from over 90% to less than 20% today, and it's dropping daily. How come the Westerners never talk about this? None of us in the West pay attention. We ignore it. Even us Jews shouldn't be happy with this. In the West, we have free elections. We engage contrasting political parties to reach compromises. Do we find anything like that in Syria and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Somalia and Sudan and even in the Palestinian Authority that rules in the authorities, which is Hamas and the Hezbollah and the PA? They rule over Gaza, Judea, and Samaria. Those people cannot comprehend the values of democracy and the morals it brings. They can't compromise, and they're not open to any other opinion. That's not the way their religion and their society works. Anyone who disagrees with the powers to be are tortured, followed by finding their way into a premature grave. Violence is how the Arab Muslim society solves its challenges, not through elections. They kill each other. The last thing any of us would want for Israel is to have the morals and values of their Arab neighbors. We don't want that. Israel has Western values, and they're not compatible. Recently, Syria killed 500,000 of its people. Can you imagine? Syria killed 500,000 of its own people. How come there were no parades or protests with pro-Syrian people? Where was it? It wasn't there. The fact is, if Israel, better yet, if the Jew cannot be blamed, nobody cares. Why can the Syrians do such horrible things to their population and always get away with it? Constantly they get away with it. Because no Jews are involved. It's the same with Iran. We all know how they treat their people. Only last week they were shooting women in the streets because they didn't have their hair covered. They were allowing their hair to blow in the wind, so they shot them. Nobody cares because there are no Jews involved. So you want to talk about a two-state solution? When I hear Palestinians and Syrians and Iranians and millions of other Muslims say they want to eliminate Israel from the face of the earth with the kind of history they have and the way they live their lives today, how can anyone not believe them? How do we dismiss that as just bloviating? They mean it. Just look at what they do to each other. When they say they want to kill all the Jews, when they say they want to eliminate Israel, how can we not take them seriously. This is why the reasonable, logical idea of dividing the land into two states has been repeatedly rejected. By who? Not by Israel, by the Arabs. They have rejected it every single time for the past 100 years. It was rejected by the Arabs in 1937. It was rejected by the Arabs in 1947. It was rejected by the Arabs again in 1948. It was rejected by the Arabs in 1967. And so many other times, both before and since. So why did they not establish a state when they were under the rule of Arab countries in the 1990s and the early 2000s? They could have. Why? They didn't. Because they don't want a state. They want the Jews out of the area. That's all they want. The PLO's leaders, Yasser Arafat, we should forget who he is, and Mohammed Abbas, did not agree to any of the deals proposed. And even after Israel withdrew from Gaza, the Palestinians were very clear about what their objective was. The Arabs in Palestine rejected the partition plan both before the establishment of Israel and after the establishment of Israel. They rejected the idea before there was a single settlement and after the settlements. They rejected the partition plan before the occupation and after the occupation. What does that tell you? Any rational thinking person needs to come to the obvious conclusion that nobody can force a good idea like a two-state solution on people who are not interested, on people who act against it again and again and again. Wishful thinking is dangerous when trying to impose it on people who have actively rejected it for 100 years, on a people who want one state, a state with no Christians, a state with no Druze, a state with no Baha'i, and especially a state with no Jews. The Hamas covenant, which 70% of the Palestinians were supporting, I don't know anymore. Sounds like they're losing support, Hamas. But the Hamas covenant says the following. It starts with this line. Israel will exist until Islam wipes it out. Can they be any clearer than that? They want a two-state solution? If you think about it, how absurd is it that those who call themselves pro-peace activists see themselves as good listeners? How can they be listening to anything? All they listen to is anything that fits in their Western-based idealistic model. They can't comprehend the other end. They are obviously not listening to reality because they cannot comprehend the notion that all Palestinians want to do, the only thing they want to do, is wipe out the Jews. That's it. And anybody else who isn't like them. Do not take my word for it. Listen to a Palestinian leader of the PLO. The PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization. He said it in 1977. The Palestinian people do not exist. There is no difference between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. We are all part of one people, the Arab nation. Just for political reasons, we carefully underwrite our Palestinian identity because it is of national interest for the Arabs to advocate the existence of Palestinians in order to destroy Zionism. In other words, Jews. Listening to that indicates that the existence of a separate Palestinian identity exists only for tactical and political reasons. Not once did a pilgrim to the Holy Land and there have been millions of pilgrims over the last 2,000 years, meet a Palestinian in the Ottoman period in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. There weren't any. The borders were open. Arabs came to Israel from Sudan and Egypt and Syria. Jews came from Yemen and Russia and Morocco, and there were even some that came from German villages. The Jews, like the Muslims and the Germans and the Russians, not one, not even once, stole a square inch of land from the Arabs. Not once. So, regardless, pro Palestinians go on and on and on and on about the Jews stealing land. If they cared about the truth, they would want to know the name of even one Jewish settlement that was built on stolen Arab land. Just one. The only land the Arabs lost was the land they lost in the wars that they started. Israel didn't start it. They were sitting peacefully and the Arabs all attacked. Who told them to start those wars? What kind of mishigas is this? And according to international law, the land that the victor of the war wins belongs to the winner. In this case, it was Israel. It was the Jews. Many on both sides tend to forget this. But the land of Israel was given to the Jew not because they took it, because it was given to them by the League of Nations. The world voted to give it to them. The homeland for the Jews was created without harming the religious and civil rights of the non-Jewish communities. As I said, Arabs live there too. Muslims live there too. Muslims vote. Muslims participate in the government. The Palestinians were not mentioned by any international entities or by any local Arab leaders at the time. Why? Because at the time there was no such thing as a Palestinian. In 1922, the mandate was reaffirmed by the League of Nations. So why am I telling you this when I am trying to discuss why a two-state solution is a non-starter? According to international law, the land belongs to the Jews. That's it. The entire world voted for it. Jews did not occupy anything. Jews did not occupy Tel Aviv. Jews did not occupy Judea and Samaria, which are known as the West Bank. Why not? Simple. The land was given to the Jews and recognized by the entire international community, which of course now is the United Nations. Second, even so, the Jews were willing to compromise because there's a democracy and because of their morals and values. The Jews were willing to compromise and split the land to live together in peace with the Arabs. The Arabs would not compromise. The thing is, while Israelis see compromise as a good thing, Arabs see it as a weakness, as a step that prevents them from wiping out Israel. So what is the solution? Reality kind of hints it for us. It's going to be only one answer. And it is not what too many people want to hear. Not even what I want to say. Too many Westerners are trying to solve an insolvable problem. We do that a lot. We seem to like to solve unsolvable problems. But the only answer is a single state. When we understand the real problem, we come to realize that no one can negotiate with violent people who have been trying to wipe them out for more than 100 years. The solution can only come when the Arabs change their ways, their morals and their values, and their paradigm of how they think. That's when it can change, not before that. It can only come when they are ready to recognize Israel It can only come when they stop bombing and killing civilians on a daily basis. Hezbollah's doing it now. So, because of this, since that is the only way, and I hate to say it, I don't think it's ever going to happen anytime soon. So, let me repeat that I do not like what I just said. I hate it. I hate it. Haj Husseini, the leader of the Arabs of this land in the 1940s, was talking about an Arab state and a Jewish state peacefully coexisting next to one another. That is what he told the British. To the Arabs, he said that his people should rise and fight for their sacred rights to kill every Jew wherever they find them. Nice guy. This was said before anyone ever heard of settlements, before anyone heard of occupation. None of that. So prove me wrong by giving me an example of minorities of Jews or Christians or LGBTQ or women or anybody who thrive and are growing as a population anywhere in any Muslim country. Name it. You cannot, because it don't exist. Okay, now I laid out the sad reality. Now that I painted a depressing future and a depressing current, the present, do I see anything good on the horizon? Well, to your surprise, I do. Absolutely yes. And it started with the first meetings of the Abraham Accords. Ever since those meetings, more and more Muslim countries are making peace with Israel and opening their embassies in Jerusalem. This past week, to my surprise, Liberia, one-time enemy of Israel, announced plans to begin negotiations and to open an embassy in Jerusalem. Another thing to notice is that of all the longtime enemies of Israel, only the Hezbollah terrorists that are funded by Iran came to the support of Hamas, and it wasn't very supportive at all. I admit I may be a cockeyed optimist, as the song says, but I have faith that more and more countries will want to negotiate relations with Israel, not because they want to be democratic, not because they share morals and values, but because of the economic strength Israel brings to them. I also have faith that the people of Iran will continue to become more vocal and more powerful until they overthrow that terrorist-based theocratic country. Once that happens, the terrorists won't be having any more financial support. The Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, no more support financially. And the other Iranian-funded terror organizations will also go away. No, there will never be a two-state solution. I don't believe it. But I do have perfect faith that there will be peace someday. Maybe we have to wait for the Mashiach to come, but there will be peace. So, we've already sung this once today, and we're going to sing it again, but please, let's end by singing the prayer for peace. The prayer that says, may God in the heavens make peace for all of Israel and for all of the world. Oseh shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen. Uyaseh shalom, Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, hu yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. I want to wish you Shabbat Shalom, and I'm Yisrael Chai, and thank you for listening to this long Devar Torah today, but I thought it was important.